Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Project Positive Planet. Welcome, ladies. Hi, Cheryl. Hi, Miss Kindness. Hi, Kim.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
Excited to have you all.
Thank you. Looking forward to this discussion.
Me too.
Super excited to be here and talk about legacy.
Legacy and legalization, the topic today. But before we start, Miss Kindness, I need to know what your cup says because I'm sure it's good.
It says, as I suspected, I was right all along.
Yes!
We all need that cup.
Yes.
We all need that cup. My morning cup says, let that shit go, and it's amazing.
Yes.
That's a good one.
And then my water has eyelashes on it.
Of course, yeah. Stephanie, I wonder if you want to start us off with our slides, or can we just jump into our review?
We can just jump in.
Okay, wonderful. This is the final, the 12th of our 12 series interviews and discussions on plant-based healing. And just a quick review before we introduce these goddesses that are on live with us today, who we're so grateful to have Cheryl and Miss Kindness with us. Before we have introduce them and move into our legacy and legalization conversation, just a quick recap. On collierconcepts.com, part of Positive Planet has been plant-based healing. Also on Well World TV, this 12 series set of interviews and intelligent discussions. Just a quick ditty. I had a little bit of flow through last night thinking, what have we really talked about in these 12 sessions? And Stephanie, my beautiful co-host, jump in at any time. But here's what came to mind. We have talked about the importance of knowing your grow, from science and research to the bioaccumulating properties of this beautiful plant, Cannabis sativa L. We have also talked about what happens in the next generations, chatting with millennials and Gen Z. Where do we go from here? How can we help you all as we help this plant? We've chatted about regenerative farming. We've chatted about moving forward into empowering women in this industry. Yes, female plant, female energy. Lots of chat about finding our purpose during a pandemic, moving into sustainability with cannabis, bioplastics, hemp-centric future, hemp being a global game changer. And now this 12th series today, we move into legacy and legalization with these two beautiful goddesses you see here. So here's my query to you. What happens when goddesses meet? An attorney and an educator and author. What happens when goddesses collide in a heart space? Your attorney and your educator author presenting Cheryl and Ms. Kindness, and presenting what happens. The result of this impact is positive growth. It is positive change. It is making strides and steps and soulful movement towards a positive future. So with that, really pleased, honored, respect, Cheryl and Miss Kindness, welcome to Plant-Based Healing today. Thank you for being here with us, and love to hear about you, what's on your mind, what's on your heart, and then we'll jump into our chat.
Well, thank you. You go first, Cheryl.
Yeah, I'll start off. Really excited to be here. I think the topic is very timely and relevant for what we as a community, a global community, are going through with the COVID pandemic. I'll just introduce myself a little bit. My name is Cheryl Murray Powell. As mentioned, I'm an attorney. I specialize in the area of cannabis and agriculture. So started out with the cannabis and expanded with my love of the plant and just nature and growing things into the agricultural realm. I am the executive director for the Black Farmers and Agriculturalists of Florida. I also sit on the board of Friends of Hemp. I sit on the board of the U.S. Hemp Building Association. And I have a number of cannabis businesses of my own. I have a merchandising line called Conurban, which is kind of a silent protest line. So that's conurban.com. And I started a new venture that I'm very excited about, which is Cannabisiac, where we, just speaking of when goddesses collide and nurturing, we nurture small business small business owners that want to get into the cannabis space through our incubator, accelerator, and co-working space. So, it's really exciting to have put time into the industry and be able to translate that time into pouring into other individuals and assisting them have their dreams come true. My experience in this industry is a dream for me. Sometimes I have to pinch myself as far as the caliber of individuals I have the pleasure of working with, the impact that I can make. I can look at laws and say, I remember when we were writing that. I remember when we were pushing back and took that line out that would have been devastating to, minorities, or it would have been devastating to so people from different socioeconomic classes. So I'm really, as we look forward, I'm very encouraged. I am also very determined, and I think this period has been put in place to strengthen us. Yes. What I really love about this forum is the fact that we're combining the hospitality and tourism industry, people who've been in the spa industry, together with the cannabis industry, and they aren't that different. They're a lot of it has to do with service and being of service and creating a better world, a better experience, a restful place for individuals. And I think cannabis has those components, as well as just looking broadly at the hospitality and tourism industry. I do hold a hospitality and tourism certificate from Florida Atlantic University in addition to my law degree. So again, so glad to be here. So glad to be with all of you ladies. And I think there's a lot that we can contribute, and we may be changing life paths in our conversation today.
Thank you.
That's exciting.
Thank you, Cheryl. And Miss Kindness, welcome.
Thank you so much. So that is my name, Ms. Kindness. I always have to start most talks with that being made clear. That's my name from birth. So it's become sort of now a calling and brought me to this place very organically. I am a professional educator. I teach college, community college, formerly a high school teacher. I used to teach geometry and pre-calculus. So I often joke about how it was innate for me to transition into cannabis because I know how to weigh things out, right? So I used to joke with my students about that, in fact. But, I came to cannabis really organically in that I wasn't really a consumer. I'm daughter of law enforcement, very conservative family, really was preaching this false gospel for many years that it was bad for us. Until during my second pregnancy, I had a really bad slip and fall, 26 weeks pregnant, injured my pelvis pretty severely, and then sought for more natural healing than the opioids that doctors were offering me. And to my surprise, I joke about this and I say, Siri, I asked Siri and she told me cannabis. So I started to do additional research, and that's the teacher side of me. And I learned the truths, and I also learned of many of the lies we had been told, and the plant's ties to social justice and racism, and so many things that we know and we may even discuss today. But that ignited something in me. So during this process, I personally found a way to use the plant to heal my own body. And in that experience, had numerous talks with my doctors about the legality around it and the risk I was putting myself in. And I was fortunate to have a great healthcare system supporting me, but also I recognized there were great disparities there as well. So just woke up one day and realized I wasn't going back into a traditional classroom, but I was going to teach other women and mothers, and now hundreds of members, male and female, who need to know this, who need to know, one, the truth about cannabis and how to use it and incorporate it into a healthy lifestyle practice. So that's how Club Kindness was born. We are a nonprofit organization, 501c4, doing that exactly, and slowly moving into supporting brands with their outreach programming and social responsibility. And some of the work that I'm doing that came to me actually by grace of cannabis. I was teaching a town hall at Los Angeles Southwest College about cannabis and the industry alongside other brilliant goddesses. And the dean said, I want you to come and teach for me. So I took that opportunity, of course, to be adjunct faculty there. And now we're really in talks about creating a workforce program where we can take students from non-credit, train them in cannabis-related business, acumen, and send them into licensed industry jobs. So similar, parallel to the work Cheryl's doing here on another coast, feeling that same passion and commitment. I have a personal story that keeps me tied to this plant. I continue to use cannabis medicinally every single day. And I just wrote a children's book about a Black cannabis farming family because for me, it's really important to normalize this plant and just show that we exist and just, undo the people who used to think like me. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation. I'm grateful. This is going to be brilliant.
We are too. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that piece of what brought you to cannabis. And I'd also like offer a shout out to Miss Kindness and her beautiful brand, EBK Apothecary.
Yes.
She's very generously, graciously offering her oral CBD spritz.
Yes, thank you. I didn't want to do that, but since you brought it up, I'll just show it. We're giving this guy away for free right now.
Yes.
So this is the EBK Spritz, and it's a healing mouth spray. It's good for your gums and your teeth, and it has broad spectrum CBD in it. So
brilliant.
Thank you for that.
EBK Apothecary. And what does EBK stand for? You've made that an acronym.
Yes, originally we started when we did Club Kindness. We thought we were going to be 215, and then I got a little smarter, and so we branched off and we created a product line called Elixirs by Kindness. But yeah, and to be frank, we just found that I'm a teacher, so the attention span of the American public and who we were trying to reach, and we just wanted it to be easier. So it's EBK now.
That's it. Short, good, straight to it. Well, thank you for that. And
thank you.
More than ever, we need to look to the past, learn from it, and move forward consciously to the positive and reimagined future for people and planet as we become positive change makers, as we make these conscious decisions, work together, build community, and move into a brighter future. We're entering the age of enlightenment. An age of light. If we're not already there, if you're not feeling a shift, you probably will. And this plant is truly part of that and part of our legacy as humanity. So let's start with the legacy conversation. As defined in dictionary.com, quote, a legacy is anything handed down from the past as from an ancestor or predecessor. For example, the legacy of ancient Rome. For example, the legacy of cannabis. Is of our ancestors, the legacy here. So Cannabis sativa L, the botanical family of both marijuana and hemp, it's a legacy plant, a history of over 6,000 years for humanity, for the planet, now being recognized, being brought forward globally in our lifetime. This is incredible. It's evolutionary, and it's about time. Now's the time. So here's my question to our goddesses, Cheryl and Miss Kindness. Again, thank you both for being here. Truly respect and appreciate what you do and who you are. What do we need to learn from this plant? And what do we need to remember deeply about the legacy and history of cannabis as we progress intelligently with Cannabis sativa L for the world?
Yeah, so learning from the plant, the plant teaches so many things. And I think, one, let's call out the fact that it is the healing of the nation. That was made popular by, Bob Marley, as far as saying cannabis is the healing of the nations. And then you have the Israeli concept of Trichomes, which is heal the world. So wherever you see cannabis, there is this concept of healing. But when it comes to being lawful and compliant, we're discouraged from using healing in the same conversation as cannabis because we risk being making a claim and being in violation of the FDA requirements. It is a biblical concept as well. So when you look at Revelations 22:2, it does call out cannabis as the healing of the nations. So
Mm-hmm.
when I think about legacy, I really focus on the forward legacy. I've been a recipient of so many gifts, from familial gifts, prior activist gifts, prior researchers' gifts, as far as what has brought us to today on the knowledge of the plant. And I want to focus on my contribution. How am I going to pay it forward? What environment am I leaving for my son, so that there is no risk of him as a little brown boy, or someone learning to drive, where he will be wrongfully incarcerated for using the plant that I love, that has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, that has been acknowledged as healing of the nation. So, that type of social justice work is part of my paying it forward, part of my legacy, but also, the general freeing up of the plant, and the general educating people so that they are empowered with the many uses of the plant. So we have to dig deep. We share our personal stories. Kim, you do a great job about that, sharing stories in use of cannabis and how CBD has benefited you and those around you. So we really need to highlight the patient experience, elevate those stories of healing. It is my first resort. Cannabis is my first resort for healing. We're currently in a situation where people are afraid to go to hospitals at this point, with detrimental impact. If you're sick, you should go to the hospital. However, even myself, like a few days ago, I was gardening. I got bitten in the face by a spider. My face was swelled up to like 3 times its size. The first thing I did was, I need to take my CBD to help with the inflammation, and I need to put my CBD cream on. And it's just natural for me. And I feel bad for the people who have not been introduced yet. So a large part of our legacy is introducing to people who haven't had that benefit yet. I'm fortunate. I've known about cannabis, for most of my life. I'm Jamaican. I have an affinity with Rastafarian culture. So I've been privileged to have that knowledge of the plant. But I have a responsibility to take that knowledge and share it with the world, so people know that there are alternatives, and may their last resort, something they don't think about, become their first resort, like it has been for me. And I think the world will be a better place. I think, some of these mental challenges that we're seeing kind of escalate. I think there'll be some mitigation of that. We have a responsibility to the mental health professional community to demand that education is introduced into that community, because we're doing a great job with the physicians and general practitioners, but how do we translate that into making sure that our mental health professionals have the knowledge so that they can assist people using this as, at a minimum, an alternative. And our hope is one of the first resort options. So legacy is very important. I always try to shy away from, being only a taker, because I have benefited from those who've come before me with regards to their work, their research, their activism with regards to cannabis. But now is the time, and we've been gifted with a COVID pandemic that gives us time to stop and pause everything that we're doing, all the things where we're feeling like cogs in the wheels, and really be strategic and work as a collaborative unit of women, of professionals, of whether it's massage therapists and tourism experts, but work as a collaborative to move this forward so that we can say that we've done something, contribute beyond what was given to us.
Preach.
Thank you. I really feel that.
I just say ditto. No. No, I'm always so inspired when I listen to Cheryl speak, and it's nice to know that there are sisters in arms out there doing this work, sharing the same mindset. I see that legacy means really honoring what has in fact been laid down before us. The challenge that I've observed in the world, and especially in the cannabis community, is a lack of really effective pedagogy. And so how do we reach people who don't have the privilege of having access to shows like this, even the internet, right? Or even a laptop or cell phone? How do we reach like these food deserts and news deserts? And so same, ditto in that I'm much more concerned with what my legacy will be, in that what am I going to leave for the future, for my children? How am I making sure that they are going to be responsible individuals and out there not teaching false information like I was for so long? I feel very fortunate to have had the education and upbringing that I did, because some of that conservatism and thought, I think, left room for me to just get through the system and then look back and go, okay, I have the freedom to now resurvey and evolve. What I mean by that, early 20s, 19, I began to explore different practices, and I converted to Buddhism. And since then, I've been practicing. It's been over 25 years. And so now, just with using cannabis, that practice has been elevated. How I communicate with the Most High has evolved. My recognition of us sharing a space and that co-creation process has evolved, in my understanding of it, and my connection to it, and my power to choose that. So these are all really cool and unique conversations, and like Cheryl said, everyone should have access to this, but so many do not. And so I'm constantly thinking about, how do I use my power and my privilege to make sure that this underserved group, and we know who they are, right? The people of color, Black people, Black Indigenous, mostly I'm concerned about Americans right now. I know this is a global plant, and I think about its impact all over the world, but right here locally around me, how can I change the minds of the people? And that's the legacy I want to leave. I want people to look back and say it was important to Miss Kindness for us to honor this, and that's what we want to carry forward. And I hope that that's with goodness, and it feels very pure in my intention. So,
preach again. Yes. And you've written a book.
Yeah, I mean, it's a part of that legacy. It's leaving something written down as well. I mean, text is so valuable. I mean, I think the internet's great, but we get away from that when we are in the screen too much. And so I still read paper books. I still buy them. I have tons of them. I have shelves full and boxes in the garage because they're important to me. One of the things that we do with Club Kindness is seek out these professionals who can support our members. And so when Cheryl was speaking about this need in mental health and behavioral science, really to be inclusive of cannabis, we're really working to find those professionals and add them to our registry, so that when our members call us, we can say, listen, you are going through a psychotherapy process and you want to use cannabis to manage it. Listen, we've got someone in our network. So we need you. And then I think coming with that is the potential for certifying organizations, right, Cheryl, where we can say this is how you include cannabis in your process of helping your clients and patients. And so we're getting there, and I'm excited about that. And for me, I have a skill set. Mm-hmm. I know how to teach. I know how to write curriculum. I know pedagogy, and that's what I could bring. And with my personal story came obviously much more passion behind it. And so I risked a lot, stopped teaching, gave up money, changed careers, did those things because that was the calling. And so, the book is an expression of that. It's written down, it's in text, it's telling a story. It's a real story. It's based on my family. And we plan to do a series, and we will take the readers through an experience with this family. And it'll just be inclusive of cannabis as a part of their familial practice, not this thing about weed. Yeah. So.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of your
opportunity, I was just going to say there's a huge opportunity, especially when you look at the wellness, spa, tourism space. There's a huge opportunity for innovation with regards to the plant as well. So really looking at the finished good and getting to a finished good and using all that we know about, let's say, essential oils and the healing relief that can be provided from those things, and then looking at, what's in a product, what are we putting on our skin, what are we putting in our bodies, and replacing some of those, chemical ingredients with natural ingredients and combining with CBD, or, there's a number of cannabinoids that can be used with terpenes, which are present in cannabis, but also present in limes, lemons, and combining terpenes to create a product that's better for everyone, that requires innovation and creativity, and will result in a repeat customer because they're not getting that anywhere else. So I think it's a real opportunity for those who are creatives and have the knowledge about what people are looking for. And, cannabis kind of hits you when it comes to vanity and wellness. So, when I use my example of the spider bite, part of it was vanity. Like, my face was puffy. I looked like a different person. I was not beautiful with like half of my face 3 times bigger. So from a vanity perspective, cannabis was a benefit. There's some age-defying benefits that have been seen with the cannabinoids as well. Yeah, exactly. Look at Miss Kindness, her beautiful face. I eat creams every single day. I use it as part of my beauty regimen, but it's also part of my wellness regimen. So my insides to be sustainable and as young as possible, so that I have live a long life for my child. But I also want my exterior to be beautiful and sustainable and more resilient based on the use of cannabinoids in my wellness routine. So I just wanted to call out the fact that there's multiple benefits when it comes to this particular industry as well.
This industry, this plant, and thank you for mentioning that diversity. The entire family, cannabis, sativa, whether we're speaking to marijuana or the growth of the hemp plant within the same botanical family, moving towards hemp specifically, medicine, as you mentioned, or natural wellness therapies, CBD, cannabinoids, terpenes, and beyond, yet to be discovered. But we have medicine, food, hemp, medicine, food, fiber, fuel, and what else? Yet to be determined. There's unlimited possibilities here. Yes, Cheryl, as you mentioned, creativity, collaboration, retooling our existing manufacturing facilities to maybe use hemp and biofiber in this more fibrous stock, especially the built environment where Cheryl and I connected through our involvement in the U.S. Hemp Building Summit and building with the stock of hemp for a zero carbon footprint, natural insulation, not chemically based building material that is instant and incredibly, incredibly effective. So this is funny just to share real briefly, and then we'll get into Ms. Kindness's book because I can't wait to get read to also and hear about it. Just really important to know that anything we need can come from hemp, right down to the rootstock. So the leaves, the flower, the bud, the stalk, the herb, it's all there to be used. And our creative community, our collaboration and support, put money into those businesses and industries and entrepreneurs that are making a difference with hemp. That's your legacy. That's our legacy as we help this plant help us, because that's what it's here for, is the message, as you mentioned, Miss Kindness, getting in touch with the divine. It's coming through loud and clear. Get it together, people. Let's do this.
I mean, you want to talk about a renaissance or a new revolution. We're in it. We're in it right now. So I'm really excited about all of the opportunities. This time for me during COVID, I just had a sort of epiphany last night. In fact, I was sitting here in the office, we were working late, and I realized, so 8 is something that's really important to me, this number 8, this sort of infinity, how everything is all looped and tied together. It's always been very dear to me, the number 8. And last night I realized that I had been talking about how, for me, COVID has been really empowering, how it's forced me to slow down and dial back into many of the projects that I wanted to complete, the book being one of them, and take Club Kindness and take EBK to places that it really is they are destined to go. COVID did that for me. And I didn't know why. I almost felt guilty feeling so celebratory about it, because many of the stories I was hearing were sad and vastly different than my experience. And I think I realized last night is I fell down on March 29th, 2012. That's the day I slipped. And that's the day my life changed. Yeah. And that is almost identical to the date or period 8 years later that this sort of awakening happened for me personally and spiritually. And so I don't know, before I tear up, last night I realized like there was some sort of completion that occurred in that 8-year period. And my daughter is beautiful and amazing. That she was the child in the womb during this, and she's empowered to be like mom, and she says that to me, and so all is good. And so I don't even know why I went there, but I wanted to share that because that's just how much more aware even the plant has made me about how things are happening, and really helping me to practice least resistance and just taking things as they come and making really good shit with it, you know?
Oh, I like that. And making really good shit. But letting go and letting God, letting go and letting this happen, get out of the way, because there's wisdom there if we're listening, right?
Absolutely.
There is. And you translated that wisdom in your book. I think Stephanie had a question for you.
Oh, I was hoping you could read an excerpt from your book, Miss Kindness.
I can. Let me pick a section I want to make sure that it feels like you are there with the root family. So we'll go down here. This is exciting. Okay. As the weeks went by, the tomatoes grew large and the eggplants more purple. Michael and Mary anxiously waited for their family's harvest. After 3 months, Michael noticed that as the lavender inside the greenhouse began to grow flowers, something else was also growing on his mom's cannabis plants. They had tiny little clusters near the stem, and when he touched them, they felt sharp and sticky. With a concerned look on his face, Michael asked, "Mommy, how come when I touch your plants, they make my fingers itchy and sticky?" Amused, Mrs. Root answered, "Those are the trichomes, sweetie. Their job is to protect the plant from predators and harsh weather conditions. Every plant has them, but they're especially strong on the cannabis plant." She reassured Michael that they could not hurt him, but she also did not want him to touch them anymore. "It sounds like my special herbs are almost ready for harvest," she said. "Mommy will take care of them in this final stage, okay?" "Yes, Mom, for sure," Michael exclaimed. So I could go on, but that's a nice little piece to kind of show how you're in this story with the family. You're just sitting there looking at their beautiful coloring, because my illustrator, Erica Presserell, has just brought these amazing characters to life. It's full edge-to-edge color. So you're in the story looking at this mom and this son discuss these plants. We're looking at lavender as a companion plant to cannabis. We're not looking at cannabis as something you smoke. In fact, in this book, there is no mention of inhalation. It's not about that. It's about them establishing this garden. I think in future books, we might touch on some social issues. Michael will obviously become a teenager, and we will have to discuss his interaction with police in some way that's obviously still kid friendly. The goal was to teach, though. So the word trichomes in the book has a little symbol next to it, and then you go to the back in the glossary and it defines trichomes. And there's an appendix for how to talk to your kids about cannabis. So that's, it's just really important to me. I think the way we're going to change things is through the next generation. We know this, right? We keep trying to practice it and get it right because we keep having babies. So I want to be able to reach more and more young people with a simple truths about cannabis.
Beautiful. I'm ready for this book to be part of curriculum.
Yes, call it out.
Starting with Montessori. Come on.
I love it. Yeah. I started my teaching career in a Montessori preschool when I was 21 years old.
Did you?
Yes.
What a wonderful message and storytelling and education for the next generation. I think a lot of adults would benefit from reading this because we're in just in the learning curve. We need this foundational understanding.
Yes, thank you. You know, the funny thing is we wrote it as far as vocab and text for the 8 to 12-year-old age range. My daughter she started it, reading it last year, and friends, kids younger can sit for it, but grandmas love it because they are this generation that was really enveloped in that propaganda. So they kind of are not okay with it, but they kind of remember that their grandmother used it. And so it's really cool to get a more mature response to it, and they love it.
When you go on to your 200th and 300th printing, as you edit the book and keep going with it, word. Maybe it's for all ages, 8 to 12, but it's all ages. For the kid at heart, for the person, for the canna curious, and botanical enthusiast that believes in, and wants to know more about plant medicine. Congratulations on your book. Look forward to supporting that and ordering on ebkapothecary.com.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Ladies, moving into legalization in our lifetime, rapid change, plenty of confusion as we're speaking this July 2020. For example, in the United States, government departments have yet to agree, yet to establish cohesive federal guidelines. Progress is happening state by state, but states differ. Again, there's confusion, and legalization standards and such are not clear. Therefore, let's take a look from North America onto a global perspective. Cheryl, who's doing it right? Who do we watch and learn from as we move towards legalization of cannabis sativa?
Let me get my pen to take notes. Go ahead, Cheryl.
So as far as legalization with regards to medical marijuana, I think the best case scenario that we have right now is that Illinois market, where they included some equity parameters. They included funding for colleges and universities, especially based on their percentage of minority attendance. They also expunged records. 770,000 records were expunged in the state of Illinois as a result of this. So I think when it comes to medical marijuana, everybody looks to Illinois right now as far as, social justice, social equity, and social responsibility. When it comes to the CBD area, it's funny you mentioned that. I've been reading a lot of legislation. I'm kind of doing a state-by-state review. There's a bill that was proposed in Connecticut. It hasn't been actually passed yet, but it does contain some really specific language around CBD retail. I think it's maybe Senate Bill 452. Don't quote me on that, but it's a bill in Connecticut that was introduced like March of this year, and I think due to COVID, it kind of took a side turn. But I really like that proposed legislation. It's very specific as far as the allowance for CBD retail. These are some edits to the existing law there. Again, it hasn't passed yet, but I really like the language where it specifically excludes hemp and CBD from the definition of marijuana. It specifically says that no licensing or permit is required for CBD retail, and it still has the right amount of public safety parameters put in place in the bill. It's very clean and clear as far as how to approach licensing. It's very clean and clear as far as what authority is responsible for issuing licensing. So I really like it. I'm still reviewing it some more, but of the legislation that I've seen, that is my favorite. My least favorite, I think, would be Iowa. I think Iowa has a lot of work to do. Some states like Idaho, they have a lot of work to do. But we do have some good legislation that's out there.
And thank you for that. What about globally? When you're looking at the global perspective, would you look to Israel?
Yeah.
They've done with research and
I think Israel, yeah. Sorry, continue.
Please. I was just mentioning
I
Israel.
think with regards to the global industry, we've seen some proactive approaches out of Colombia from from a legislative perspective. When it comes to, I like the UK approach with the novel foods. EU has a novel foods approach, but recently it was announced that, the EU is pausing their reviews. So not really pleased with that, but we understand that we want to align and calibrate with treaties. But when it comes to the UK, they're moving forward. They're developing their approach, and I think there's opportunity to influence that approach. So watching for the UK, but I've seen a lot of proactive activity out of Colombia. A lot of people internationally, they're going to Colombia to actually participate in that market, and that's what we want. The world is a small, the globe is small now. The world is a small place. We're interacting more. So the fact that people are flocking from, whether it's Africa, Australia, in the EU, Israel, the United States to do business in Colombia, I think that speaks to their legislation and the permissiveness of their legislation. When you speak about Israel, Israel has been very proactive when it comes to the research side. So I think when we're looking at the DEA, FDA relationship with our universities and researchers, I think that component, we can definitely look to Israel for guidance. So a free and open market, I think, there's some things we can take from Colombia. And I think when we're looking at, research and innovation and really understanding more about the plants, I would look to Israel for sure. And they have some really solid research that's there, and they've been very generous as far as sharing that research.
And Cheryl, speaking of, with your Caribbean roots and ties, there are some, the Caribbean's been devastated the last couple of months because their whole bloodline is tourism. But there are some countries there, I think, that are making improvements with cannabis. I don't know if you're up to date or can share specifically on those. But I think
absolutely.
Bahamas and Jamaica would be probably the top three making strides. But
so the U.S. Virgin Islands, they've announced recently that they're moving forward with, licensure. Jamaica, I typically, outside of COVID, I'm in Jamaica about 2 or 3 times per month. I'm actually on their Bureau of Standards Committee for cannabis. So I sit on that committee. They just had a launch last week, a launch event. There were over 200 people on a Zoom call for the launch of the standards for cannabis for the country of Jamaica. I'm very proud of that work. It was definitely a cross-disciplinary approach to it with, your academics, your government. The CLA was involved, which is the Cannabis Licensing Authority, which by their amendment to the Dangerous Drugs Act of 2015, the Cannabis Licensing Authority, for the most part, has been given authority over cannabis, with the exception of the sacramental use of the Rastafarian community, the Maroon community, which actually sits with the Ministry of Justice. So I do want to recognize Jamaica with regards to being the first country in modern times to recognize sacramental use of marijuana. Their model has been replicated in other Caribbean countries. I know St. Vincent and the Grenadines has, they made an attempt to include the sacramental and some forgiveness policies with regards to that. Barbados announced, I believe it's this week, that they'll start licensing as early as February.
Rihanna, where you at?
Yeah, exactly. I know she's right in the middle of them. She's giving them respirators for COVID, and I know she's involved with the ganja market there as well. So I'm really proud of the Caribbean. They're more tentative when it comes to the treaty restrictions, and I think that's responsible. I've had the privilege of being on stage with Minister Chuck over the Department of the Ministry of Justice, and he was very transparent as far as there are parameters they have to work within. One is the influence of the U.S. and 2 is the influence and the agreements for the treaties. So I think they've done a great job of towing the line with the treaties, but really empowering their community. And Another feature that we see prevalent in the Caribbean is, and in Jamaica is a great example, is the fact that any cannabis licenses that are issued by Jamaica has to be owned 51% by a Jamaican. And with that, you kind of eliminate some of the exploitive, you don't eliminate it altogether, but you limit the exploitive tendencies of our industry. So I'm really proud of what's happening in the Caribbean. I've been fortunate to work with, some of the ministers of agriculture in developing their draft proposals for parliamentary approval. So I think we're seeing some great things out of there. I think that is a key in the return to tourism. I think two segments that are going to see huge growth that I'm passionate about include agritourism and cannabis tourism. It already existed without being recognized for decades. People know, and I have my business partners actually based in Jamaica, and we talk often, his name's Billy Reynolds, we talk often about, people often go to Jamaica for the red stripe and ganja, along with the beaches and the beautiful women and the great food. But there are a lot of reasons to go to the Caribbean. They are a tourism hotspot. We have the benefit of expats as well. We have a strong technology and education base. The University of West Indies is rated in one of the top 5% of universities globally, and they're invested and doing tremendous amount of research and work with regards to cannabis research, understanding efficacy, as well as looking at our landrace strains. How do we protect those landrace strains from a intellectual property perspective, but how do we optimize the healing benefits using that as indigenous medicine along with other phytomedicines?
That's really exciting.
I'm a really good note taker too. I see.
Thank you. You have a direct line to me, so no worries. We'll be going. I can't wait to take you guys to Jamaica so you can really enjoy and see my home the way I see my home.
I'm so ready.
What part of Jamaica are you from, Cheryl?
What was that?
What part of Jamaica are you from?
St. Andrews, so an area on the water called Shooter's Hill is where my family's from. So that, corporate St. Andrews, so Kingston, basically not far from Harborview, Bull Bay area. That's where we're from. But I, every time I go to a different part of the island. There's some great cannabis festivals as well. So University of Technology, traditionally in July, it would have just happened. They do a great cannabis research academic conference. Like 4th of July weekend for us. And then you have Rastafari Roots Fest, which is in December, right before Christmas. One of the Rastafari elders, Ras Ayavi, holds that in Negril. And then you have Rebel Salute, which is a huge concert. It's been going on for like 26, 27 years, but they have what they call a herb curve, where it's an area for education and sale of ganja-related items and things like that. And a lot of it is sacramentally grown, which is different, of course, from the commercially grown ganja. So there are great opportunities to interface with the indigenous community, the traditional ganja growers, and really amazing innovative minds of university researchers and university students in Jamaica.
In 2018, we had a conference there in Montego Bay, and Chronix was playing. So whenever we have a conference that brings, local people and people from all, because people I don't think necessarily know, Caribbean cultures are so different no matter where you go. So we had people from 20 different islands in the U.S., and we took them all to a Chronix concert. And talk about an eye-opening experience for a lot of people.
Reggae music just, again, the plant cannabis, what I love to say about it, it unifies people. It breaks down barriers. Reggae music has the same effect. So Jamaica has both. And Chronix is one of those amazing artists that keeps getting better with time. I've heard him play in Toronto. He actually was the headliner for Rastafari Roots Fest last December when I was there. And he also performed shortly before that, probably November, at the Peter Tosh Foundation had an amazing concert in Kingston. Peter Tosh's daughter, Nyambe McIntosh, she does a lot of great work for the community. She keeps his legacy alive. So those are people who have, when you talk about legacy, being the daughter of Peter Tosh, I also want to send condolences to the family. Jawara Tosh, known as Tosh One, passed away this year. And just to highlight some of the change that needs to happen, Jawara Tosh was a performer, performed as Tosh One, son of Peter Tosh, and you would assume a certain amount of privilege just from that. Well, he was arrested for cannabis, put in jail, and for a 6-month sentence, I believe. And while he was in jail, he was beaten by another inmate. He's been on life support for the past 3 years, passed away this. So just thinking of how a family that's given so much to the world,
Yes.
to cannabis industry, had one of their loved ones taken from them. And it's been a 3-year journey of trying to pray him back into life. And we've all been, praying for the family. But I do want to recognize that great, great loss. And we want to make sure that we say today, no more lies, no more mugshots for something that heals and is the healing of the nations.
And the disparity is just what breaks my heart, because when I mentioned earlier that, I grow cannabis in my yard, in my closet, and that freedom, that privilege, it should be for everyone. So that disparity is just heartbreaking.
That's injustice. That's it.
That's injustice. Yeah.
Like looking to Thailand, as we mentioned in our tech check, it's now completely legal in the country of Thailand to grow your lemongrass, your tamarind, and your cannabis. And they recognize the medicinal benefits. It's part of the culture. It's part of the healing. It's part of every home garden. Rightfully so.
As it should be. Yeah.
And while we're chatting here, let's dispel a stigma right here, right now, and blow it up. People who utilize cannabis as medicine, the stoner mentality does not really exist. It's actually a motivator, a neurostimulator, if you will, in terms of helping us reach, pun intended, reach a higher potential. It's wrong to think that people who are using cannabis medicinally are stoners or not motivated or not contributing to society. On the contrary, we're the change makers. I have this conversation with parents a lot.
Yeah. Typically, they are parents who are hiding their consumption from their teenagers while vilifying their teenagers for smoking weed in secret. And so that dichotomy, it blows my mind because I see it every day. And it's funny. Now it's laughable. I'm not laughing at you, moms, I swear. But I'm saying, it's just so funny how we can trick ourselves into believing things. And if we keep telling the same story over and over again, we believe it's truth at some point. And so I think that, I'm a stoner, whatever that means. Go ahead, run with it. I think what's important is that we start to redefine what consumption is, and really switch from recreational and medical. I don't even like the term recreational. I will say adult use because I think it just gets right to the point. But for me, and I often say this, the difference between medical and recreational is the intention of the consumer. That's it. So if I take a dab because I want my mind to just completely let go, that is a part of my mental health practice, right? I can see it that way, or I can say, I'm taking a dab because I want to get high. All of a sudden it changes because of our implicit bias and all these messages we've been receiving throughout time. All of a sudden the word high changes what it is for the person watching. And I think that's what we really need to start talking more about, this word choice, this perception. I am high. That's why my mental stress is really, that is my mental health practice. Now, am I unable to function? Am I irresponsible? I say this with the moms of the teenagers. Was your kid lazy before he smoked? He was already lazy, you know? So we make these associations, we attach it to the stigma because we have this bias that we've grown up being fed. And we've got to just break that down.
We do break that down. In fact, right here, right now, it's that intention of becoming enlightened, not high, but enlightened or elevated or inspired or heart.
I like the word well.
I'm well. What about you?
Say again, Cheryl?
I said you raised an important point about responsible parenting. And there's a headline that people are talking about with regards to Johnny Depp. And Johnny Depp has recently, I guess in his divorce proceedings, revealed that his 13-year-old, he has introduced her to cannabis for a number of reasons. You know, one, he thinks it's safer for her to consume with him than with other people. He knows exactly what she's getting with him. So I think that's going to spark a new conversation about, you know, you're not a bad parent if you are owning the experience of your children, not children, because again, we talk about adult use, but with your adolescents as they are exploring, encouraging them to have honest conversations with you as a parent and say, I'd rather you not be reliant on other people and what they're putting in a joint, but I want you to feel free to express yourself in a home environment. And I think we're going to have more conversations about that.
Absolutely. And they need to be just matter of fact, which is something we talk about in the guide for how to talk to your kids about cannabis, because my son is 10 and I have taught him about inhaling hot smoke and the damage it causes to a developing brain. He's like, what does that mean? I've explained to him, well, you're going to take some time for this thing called the frontal lobe to really stick together and be strong. And that happens when you're about 25. I'm not opposed to you trying cannabis. You know why. I'm a proponent of micro servings, micro dosing. So if it gets to a point where you want to use it to manage some challenges, I'm here for you. And there is I don't even think he thinks about getting his weed somewhere else. Why would he? So because that conversation is just there as a part of the same way he can't take Tylenol from the cabinet without my permission. It's just a part of, you know, and same, Cheryl, like when something happens, I go right to the CBD or right to the topical or right to the THC spray. Myself, I'll go right to a cannabis pill or tincture, you know. But even for my son, if he's feeling a little, Mom, I just can't focus, I go take some CBD drops. It's very regular practice in our homes. And he understands the difference, what cannabinoids are. So it means that I don't feel stressed about when he becomes a teenager and he wants to break the rule of no smoking, because he's going to break it. But he's going to ask me. And so I think that's really, really important. And again, back to the home, back to the legacy being through what we leave in our children and who we teach.
As an industry, we've always embraced public safety. We are not the opposition to public safety. We have always asked for regulations. We've always asked for legalization. So I mentioned this on a webinar I did yesterday. We have been self-regulated for decades. And we have booted people out of our industry on our own. So we embrace the fact that now we're going to learn more about the food sciences. We're going to learn more about GMP certification. We're not opposed to or offended by the nice, pretty CBD packaging that looks very, palatable to people who've traditionally not embraced the cannabis industry. We are all of those things. Cannabis is all of those things. You know, I'm more of a CBD girl, but it doesn't make me better than people who use marijuana dabs, you know, that's inhalables, smokables, etc. It doesn't. There is no hierarchy in cannabis. So we need to embrace the fact that we are getting more corporate and it is more regulated and there are more rules, because we've always wanted people to be as safe as possible. We are embracing the fact that physicians are finally allowed to make this as a recommendation to their patients, and we support them with whatever information we've gathered over the years. So at the end of the day, we will be on the right side of this.
Absolutely.
That's our rightful place.
Yes.
We look forward to it.
Yes.
We march towards it, and we are holding hands as we get there. THC people, CBD people, CBG people, pretty bottles, rolling a joint, rolling a blunt, taking a dab. We are united. Not everything feels appropriate in each kind of environment or in each country. That's why we have autonomy, so that you know, states, governments can make their rules based on their cultures, based on what works for their community and keeping them safe. But we will always educate so that they can have the most holistic, access, permissive environment for people, because we care. People have lost their freedom to help people who are dying so that they can live longer. And that's the heart of the industry.
And that's our job as educators, to put that culture in context, right? What does it mean here? What does it mean here? What does it mean here? And that's a part of that whole normalization process. Yeah, I mean, 100%. Again, I mean, what's the word you say for it? Oh, ditto. Everything. It's really, that's our job. And that's what I mean about that effective pedagogy. Like, how are we reaching our audience? How are we reaching consumers? How are we reaching people globally, locally, and making sure that they understand the varying aspects of the culture of cannabis? And for me, you know, specific language, again, is so important. We've recently begun to evolve from saying, speaking of the hierarchy, Cheryl, entourage effect. Because when we think of an entourage, we think of this one leader and all these other little guys kind of being his entourage or her entourage and following them. Molecular synergy is the term that we're evolving to now, because that's really how the plant works together. Holistically, all that synergy, it's not like this following, it's like this, right? And so if we can mimic that in our communities, imagine what kind of changes we'd see.
What this plant is teaching us.
Yes. And we have so much more to learn.
Yes, we do.
So much.
We're ready. Yes. We're really ready. The new normal is very exciting and very, let's do this. Now's the time. Unfortunately, it's just about time to wrap up. I wanted to offer a heartfelt thank you to you, Cheryl, to Miss Kindness, to my co-host and friend, Stephanie Rest. Thank you so much for being here, for being present, for being part of this conversation. May we continue with love, gratitude, respect, and work together, because it's community. It's us, it's we.
Absolutely. Namaste.
We appreciate it. We appreciate the platform. Thank you. So nice to meet you, Steph. I'll see you in the Caribbean. And thank you for hosting us. And Miss Kindness, it's always an honor to share a platform or stage with you. So we're going to move forward together.
Yes, absolutely.
Give a little round of applause to Kim for putting this together in 12 weeks. I mean,
you rock, Kim. The first time I met you.
It's been a wonderful journey. Have a great weekend, ladies.
Same.
Thank you. Thank you.